Hi there. This isn't canning related, even though this is nothing fancy canning, but I've had lots of people ask me, how do you make chipped beef gravy or sausage gravy? So I thought I'd hop on here and just give you a rundown of how I make my chipped beef gravy or sausage gravy, either way. So whatever meat you would like. Some people like a hamburger. Same thing. So this is actually chipped deer meat from my husband's deer that he got. All right, so I chop it up into little pieces, use a knife, use scissors, whatever. So it's dried beef, dried deer. All right, or you would fry your sausage or hamburger in your pot. So this is just a regular stock pot, something you might boil noodles in. All right. So this deer was very lean. It did not have a lot of grease or oil. So I did add about a quarter cup of oil to this to fry, because you need that little bit of oil in the bottom to make that flour roux that we're going to make on it. So if you're doing hamburger or pork, you're not going to drain it. Let that grease in your pan. Okay, so sausage or hamburger. But the dried beef and dried chipped deer, dried chipped beef, they require a little bit of oil. So maybe about a quarter cup of oil to get them frying. I like to fry it up nice and brown. Not necessarily fully crispy. Dried beef will crisp up a little bit. I like it that way. Some people don't. So you wouldn't have to do this for quite as long. But this is the chipped deer, so it's a little thicker cut. So I'm frying it just a little bit longer, but it's looking good to me. Got a nice fry going on. So this is how I was taught by my mom, so you're not going to have measurements. So bear with me. Again, the more you do it, the more you practice, the better it gets. Alrighty. So this is a quarter cup of flour. I do not measure, but I'm going to show you what I look for. So I'm going to sprinkle that in. I probably will add a little bit more. But I want to make what's called a roux. So I want that flour to coat that meat. That's what my mom said. Coat the meat with the flour. I want that oil soaked up in that flour. All right. I forgot to tell you also, I use seasoned salt, Lowry seasoned salt, in my chipped beef and my sausage gravy. All right. So actually, my son introduced me to this, which has the black pepper already in it. Love it. Otherwise, I would have added black pepper also. So seasoned salt and black pepper on my meat as I was frying it. Sorry, I forgot to tell you that. All right, so now got my flour on there. See, I have a little bit of white showing. It has absorbed all that oil and grease. I'm going to turn my temperature down on my stove now to a low. All right, get that meat all moved around. I want to see some little white flour. I don't want anything to be real wet, all right, because that's what's going to make my thickening. All righty, now it's time for the milk. Again, I'm not going to measure. I'm going to pour it in. Myself, I have just gotten used to having that thickness in my meat, and I pour my stock pot about half full. Little over a half a gallon of milk in mine. So I'm making a nice quantity. This is going to go to church tomorrow morning. So actually, there you go. I used a little more than a half a gallon. I used 2/3 of a gallon. Just regular old whole milk. You can use low fat 2%, but I will tell you that's going to make a difference in how it cooks up. It is going to be a little runnier. You may want to add a thickener to it, meaning a flour milk mixture, as if you were going to make a gravy. But I promise you, as I cook this, now that I have my milk in, I'm going to turn it back up to about a medium. All right, and it's going to cook down. It's going to take me about a half hour probably to cook that down into a bubbly gravy. All right, that milk's absorbing that roux that was on the meat. It all cooks together. You could add some more pepper at this point if you want. You can wait and season it some more once you have it all cooked together and it's thickened. But if you do that, keep an eye on it. You don't have to stir it the entire time, but don't walk away. because that's a good way to scorch the bottom of your gravy. That's how I do it. I do it the exact same way with my sausage. In my sausage gravy, I probably add a little extra pepper. My chipped beef gravies, I just use that seasoned salt and a couple shakes of pepper. So there we go. I'll come back once it's thickened up and show you my consistency and let you know about how long it took to make it. Okay, I'm back. All right, I set a timer so I could tell you about how long it took me to cook this down. Because I added a little extra milk there while I was pouring, this took me about 45 minutes to cook down. It's still a little bit thinner. I want it a little bit thinner because I'm going to be putting this into the crock pot for tomorrow morning. So it will thicken up as it cools, and then being reheated, it'll thicken up also. If I was going to serve this tonight, I would probably just cook it down a little bit further just to get that thickness, and I also probably would have did it in a cast iron, which then would have made it a little more surface area. You can get it a little bit thicker. But there's what it looks like. You cook it to the desired thickness you want. Again, some people like it very, very thick. You can just cut back on your milk a little bit. You like it a little bit thinner, you can do it just a little extra milk like I had done. But on average, about a half a gallon of milk in my cast iron skillet or my stock pot. Either way, again, just a little thinner tonight. I've brought it up to a boil. I don't know if you can see it boiling. There you go. So again, at that stage, do not walk away. Do not stop stirring. You want to make sure you continually stir once it reaches that boil. You can also tell because it starts to thicken along your edges. And this is cooked down almost a whole inch. So that's why I said use a whole milk. If you use a low fat or a 2% or something like that, you've got a lot more water to cook off. So I always use that whole milk so that I get that nice, thick, creamy gravy. Again, nothing fancy, just how my mom did it. Want to preserve the recipe for my family and friends that just had questions on how to make it. Again, I do the exact same thing if I was making sausage gravy. I do the exact same thing if I was making hamburger. So this is actually dried chipped deer. Same recipe if I was doing dried chipped beef, which is one of my favorites. So there we go. It's coming to a nice rolling boil. Again, this took me about 45 minutes. Usually for a dinner in my cast iron, it takes me about a half hour to cook it down. So it is a little slower, not as fast as opening that jar, but let me tell you, it's going to taste a lot better than opening those cans of gravy. So here you go. There's your chipped beef gravy, chipped deer, sausage gravy, same recipes. Alrighty. I hope you enjoyed.